If you don't have a crystal clear video content strategy in place that starts with a distribution plan, a distribution roadmap of any sort, and works backwards from there to dictate the types of videos that you should be producing, then let me stop you right there. Spending money on an in-house or outsourced production help is putting the cart before the horse, and a decision in either direction is really going to be an inefficient use of your budget if you are just shooting from the hip. Hey, welcome to the Higher Ed Storytelling University podcast, a show where we bring together Marcom leaders from both inside and outside higher ed to give you fresh perspectives on successful organic content creation and strategy in higher education. My name is John Azoni. I'm the founder at UNVEILD, a video production company working specifically with colleges on their storytelling and commercial video content. You can learn more about our work at unveiled.tv. That's UNVEILD. And if creating content that resonates emotionally with your audience is a priority for you, then you need to be subscribed to the Higher Ed Storytellers Digest. It's my weekly newsletter where we cover a lot of ground about content creation and strategy in higher ed. So sign up for that for free at unveiled.tv/newsletter. All right, let's get on with the show. Well, hey folks, thanks for joining us. Today we are talking about higher ed videography. Should you hire in-house or outsource? And this is a great question. And I think you might be like, oh, okay, John, promotes his own video company, so he's going to be biased towards outsourcing. And that is not true. You would be wrong, because I see a lot of value in in-house videographers, and I'm a big fan of them if you are going to do it right. It's not the right decision for every school. For some schools, I think it makes sense. And for a certain pocket of deliverables, I think it makes a lot of sense. I think that every school should have an in-house videographer if you can afford it. So that said, sometimes, it might make more sense to outsource, and we're going to talk about when it makes more sense to outsource versus to hire. So here's my one disclaimer is if you don't have a crystal clear video content strategy in place that starts with a distribution plan, a distribution roadmap of any sort, and works backwards from there to dictate the types of videos that you should be producing, then let me stop you right there. Spending money on an in-house or outsourced production help is putting the cart before the horse, and a decision in either direction is really going to be an inefficient use of your budget if you are just shooting from the hip. So let's get that strategy in place, and then you can make an informed decision about the most appropriate type of talent to bring on to execute that strategy. But don't do the whole ready, fire, aim thing. All right, let's start with hiring in-house. Pros. So we're going to do a pro-con list. Here's the pros. And, I worked with ChatGPT because I wrote this whole article about this. And then I worked with ChatGPT to come up with a word that would lead each bullet point, that would sort of define each bullet point. So ChatGPT told me agility. That's the word for this bullet point. The ability to move quickly on time-sensitive video needs, since you have direct access to your videographer at all times. So absolutely. I mean, you can walk down the hallway and tap your videographer and say, hey, I need you to stop doing that and do this instead. And they'll be like, all right, you signed my paycheck, so okay. So, the ability to be really flexible and have direct access to that videographer is a huge plus. The next one would be familiarity. Someone that's on staff is going to have a lot more granular understanding of your institution's brand and the culture on campus. They're going to know the ins and outs, the little subtle nuances that will make a big difference in the content. Next would be flexibility. The ability for that videographer to film a wider array of B-roll, since you're not paying a fee every time you send them out to film. So every time we at Unveiled go to film, you're paying by the day. So that's how it works across the board with hiring video vendors. And actually, very few video production companies will allow you to hire them for a half day of filming. They're going to charge you a full day of filming, no matter if they're spending an hour on your campus or if they're spending 8 hours on your campus. So, if you just need someone to go real quick to this, the engineering lab or something like that and get some footage of people making a generator or something like that, just real quick, spend a half an hour, get some good generator making footage. That's going to be way easier for your in-house videographer than to pay for an entire day of filming for a outsourced company to come in and film that. All right, communication. Communication's much easier having direct access to someone that's on staff. I mean, that's pretty obvious. You could Slack message them or just tap them on the shoulder rather than waiting for an outsourced contractor to respond to an email. Collaboration. So cross-departmental collaboration is made easier. Again, all of this kind of works together. The flexibility of someone to be able to just pop over to another school within your campus and film something, or having a more intimate knowledge of the brand and what that school needs versus what this other school needs. So collaboration is easier. They might know the marketing leader over that other school or whoever's requesting the video admissions or whatever. So there's just easier communication and collaboration. And then ideation, assuming you hire someone with leadership and directing abilities, that person can be more readily available to help other departments shape their ideas before they go into production. That might be something that, an outsourced company can do that as well. But again, with that collaboration and the communication comes easier access to ideation that you're not having to, pay extra for a contractor. So here's the cons. Let's talk about cons. Misalignment. So this is just a big one. Many institutions hire in-house, but they don't have a clear content strategy. And then they just fall victim to this like short order cook syndrome. They're creating videos and just fulfilling requests for other departments that are just not aligned with institutional goals. And that's just a trap of hiring in-house. You go, okay, well, this person's at my beck and call now. And so I can get them to do whatever I want. And because we don't have a strategy, let's just give them whatever's yelling the loudest. And that, I talk to a lot of in-house videographers and they just say that that's just a very consistent pattern, a complaint across the board. It's like, they'll tell me like, I'm working on stuff that's just meaningless. And like, just talking head of the president, just saying whatever, just some comms thing that could have just been a text email or that could have filmed on his iPhone or something like that. So they're just being sort of deployed for like not important, not strategic stuff. And there's just no strategy. And so they're just pushing buttons at everyone's beck and call. So misalignment, that's a big one. Backing up, you really need a strategy. If you're going to hire in-house, don't do that unless you have very clear distribution strategies and just strategies in general for video content. What should be made? What should your team spend time on versus what's not a good use of their time? And then hidden costs. So the cost, I don't think we talk enough about this. The cost is much greater than just the salary. So you might be looking at, okay, let's pay someone $75,000 and, we'll get unlimited access to them versus getting less videos out of an outsourced company, spending the same amount of money. But you really have to think about it as the hidden costs. There's benefits. According to ChatGPT, who gave me 2023 US Bureau of Labor Statistics data. So on average, like for every hour worked, there's an additional $12.09 per hour added onto that in costs. That's just benefits. So that's an additional, on average, $25,147 annually. So now that $75,000, you're already into six figures. That's not even taking into account equipment. So a video camera is only a fraction of the equation. You need lenses, you need cameras, stabilizers like tripods, perhaps a gimbal for smooth, like walking shots and cool sweeping sort of cool footage, audio equipment, lights. You need light modifiers. So you're not just like blasting. It's not as lighting is a whole art. You're not just turning on a light. There's tools that videographers use to modify the light so that's very soft and flattering. And you have to purchase those tools. There's light stands and sandbags and all this, stuff. I've acquired, a ton of gear, in just a couple of years, and it's almost all gets used. I don't buy stuff like randomly too much. Once in a while I do, because I do like, it's exciting when that, Amazon package arrives on my front doorstep. But generally I'm pretty cautious about what I spend money on gear wise. It has to really be a necessity, and I have acquired a lot. $20,000 to get up and running with modern professional grade gear, like a camera that's going to record like at a cinematic sort of level, We're not talking like Steven Spielberg, Michael Bay type of like Ari Alexa, $70,000 camera rig here. We're just talking like, even just like $2,000-$3,000 for one camera. That's just for one camera. You need multiple cameras, you need lights, all that audio stuff, all the other stuff. And then there's management. So there's obviously a cost to managing an employee. So not only in dollars, but just mental load, making sure that the pipeline is filled with stuff for them to do. I'll tell you what, I recently brought on a project manager. Her name is Mila. She's great so far. And one of the things that's been stressing me out is how do I untangle myself from all the project management work and hand it off to her, which might not be a problem for hiring a videographer, but what would be a problem and was something I stress about is like, I need to keep her busy. I need to like make sure she's always got something on her plate to do, because now I've got someone relying on me for direction. It's not just on my plate and I can just get to it whenever. It's like someone's like, all right, I'm here to work. Like, what are we doing? So just that mental load and making sure processes are in order and that you're being clear in your communication and, leadership and all this stuff comes into play with managing even just one video person. And then there's ongoing professional development. So the idea that you're going to find one sort of unicorn videographer that needs zero refining and excels in every area of their role is very slim. Trust me, I've hired a lot of freelancers in my career. I've been doing this 15 years now on a professional level. And I'll tell you what, hiring is hard. I mean, even just hiring the right freelancer is hard. But then when you hire someone that you're stuck with, that's even harder, because it's hard to judge everything that needs to be judged by the work on their website. Anyway, that's a whole nother topic. But all this to say, the idea that someone's going to be like this stellar camera person, lighting, can do audio, and is also a great editor, and not even that, is also a great leader. Part of being a videographer is being able to lead, being able to think creatively, being able to have a marketing mindset going into executing the project. And not everyone has that. You might just get someone that knows how to make a good interview, like an interview, look good, but they don't really know marketing. They haven't been studying marketing for years and years to know the nuances about messaging and storytelling and things like that. So the idea that just you're going to get someone that doesn't need any professional development is kind of a pipe dream. Also, thinking about things like, in order for someone to fly a drone, which I know colleges love drone footage, and I do too. I mean, I think it's a really useful tool. I'm amazed at what's possible, here in 2025, that we can get a cinematic camera in the air flying through trees and stuff. But a lot of people don't know this. In order for you to get drone footage, you need to be hiring a licensed pilot. Otherwise, you're going against the FAA, because drones used for commercial purposes, which is, marketing for a college would be, requires a license. So, I think it's silly. I mean, the stuff that the FAA requires you to know in order to fly a drone is quite ridiculous. I mean, I'm a licensed pilot. I've taken the test. It was a lot of studying. I'm like, are they expecting me to fly like a Boeing 707, whatever the numbers are, 757? Are they expecting me that I'm going to fly this passenger plane? Because you have to know like weather codes and like latitude and longitude and weather patterns and like all this stuff. It really does feel like you're studying to fly a commercial jet. So, but nonetheless, it's unavoidable in getting that pilot's license. And then let's see, scarcity. So finding great storytelling talent is very difficult. Over a decade of hiring freelancers and staff that looked great on paper, but really didn't have that spark required to create really compelling content. You might find someone who can shoot great looking footage, but their storytelling, in the editing phase is lacking. Tell you what, one of the hardest things is to find a good editor. But again, another episode. Or you might find someone who's a good editor, but they don't understand camera settings and just lack the lighting chops necessary for cinematic looking footage and stuff like that. Charisma. There's a whole social component to being a videographer. You have to be on, you have to be able to make your subjects feel comfortable. Being on camera is kind of a vulnerable experience. So you don't want someone that's like socially awkward and like lacks personality to make that person feel like, to make the moment feel even more awkward than it is already for them. Because I tell you what, 80% of people that we film at Unveiled don't want to be on camera. They don't want to be there. Maybe they said yes to being in a marketing video, but they're not excited about it. And they're nervous and they need coaching. So that's where someone with the right personality is key. Empathy is another one. Being a videographer is a little bit like being a therapist. I mean, as a storyteller, you have to draw out the compelling stuff that's hiding beneath the surface. Someone who's a good videographer on a technical level might not have this creative sort of conversation skill. And then output. So if your budget only allows for one videographer in-house, output's going to be an issue. You'll need to really, really throttle your expectations about what one person can achieve in a given amount of time without cutting corners. A better situation would be to have someone produce, direct, do all the filming, interface with campus stakeholders, and have a separate editor who's focused primarily on post-production. But that's likely, that's doubling your costs. But one videographer to rule them all and just do everything for all the campus stakeholders and just take every request. And I mean, they're going to spend 80% of their time sitting at a computer editing, because that takes a lot of time. So you have to really throttle your expectations as to what you can realistically get through that internal team, and whether or not that's going to be timely enough for a campus partner who needs something for a specific deadline or whatever. When you think videographer, you probably think of one person with a camera that will come film some stuff for YouTube for you. When you think commercial, you probably think like this separate big undertaking that involves an ad agency and all this stuff. But at Unveiled, guess what? We do both. You want to do some nimble documentary style storytelling? We got you. You want to create a polished, like really slick 30-second commercial to stream on Hulu with professional actors and set design and a director that yells action. And there's like a whole table that's just filled with like free bagels and snacks and coffee all day long. Guess what? We got you there too. And it would not be our first rodeo. We've done some rodeos. We can get this done for you anywhere in the US without the travel costs that would come along with flying a 20-person crew out. So don't feel like you have to be limited by your location with who you hire for a project like this. So head over to unveiled.tv/commercials to see some of our commercial work, as well as behind the scenes content. And you can book a call with me to chat further right there on our website. All right, back to the show. Okay, so outsourcing. Let's talk about outsourcing, folks. So the pros of outsourcing. Perspective. You'll benefit greatly from a fresh perspective. When you work in-house long enough, you become too close to the work to be objective, in your decision-making, and outside partners really going to bring expertise from a wide range of clients and experiences that will help you view your goals in a new light. Folks, I talk about content creation every day on LinkedIn, in my newsletter, on this podcast, and I'm still too close to it. Like, I have content mentors that can look at what I'm doing and be like, oh, hey, here's a blind spot. Then I look at what they said. I'm like, oh, that's totally obvious. Why didn't I think of that? It's because I'm in it every day. And for better or for worse, leadership values the perspective of someone on the outside more so than on the inside. So if you want to get something done, tell them a consultant said to do this. And then prioritization. Hiring an outside, video vendor is going to force your team to prioritize projects because each project is going to come with a tangible cost, thereby, reducing budget waste on non-mission critical busy work. If you're forced to see money going out of your budget, in real time, you're going to be more careful about what you say yes to. And cost effectiveness. It's often less expensive across the fiscal year to outsource, given that you're not paying for equipment and benefits and management costs and all those hidden expenses that we talked about that come along with hiring an employee. It's, efficiency is a thing. You don't have to manage the day-to-day activities of internal staff. You're not leaking productivity, having that person tied up in meetings and stuff. Like when they're working on your stuff, they're working on your stuff. And then expertise. So the quality of work is often going to be superior with external partners. External partners are going to curate a solid team for the job, the right team for the right job. You could hire a freelancer that's kind of like a one-man band and they'll do everything, and that's cool, but you're sort of in that same boat of like hoping for a unicorn. Here at Unveiled, we have people that do production and they're really good at production. And then we get that footage back, and then we have our editors that are really good at editing, and all they do is editing. And so we're going to curate the right team. If we're doing a commercial, a big budget commercial, we're going to bring on a really like a quality commercial director, not just send some videographer with, with a couple cameras to go film this broadcast commercial. I mean, a commercial crew is like 20 people. We're hiring a director, a cinematographer, and all the infrastructure and crew around that to make a bigger production like that happen, which, so you're just going to get more expertise. You're going to get a more curated team, mostly if you're working with a production company. If you're hiring just a single, John Smith freelancer, then typically, that person might be doing the shooting and editing, and this point might be a little mute. Versatility. You'll get access to more specialists. Like I said, a good outside agency is going to have a variety of contacts they're going to pull into projects at any moment. Animators, script writers, freelancers with specialized equipment and licenses, like the drone pilot that I mentioned before. Someone that is a great videographer, as soon as you want something with animation in it or motion graphics, now you might have a problem, because it's rare that someone's a really good videographer and is really good with motion graphics too, because it's a whole separate program. It's not Adobe Premiere, it's Adobe After Effects, and that's a whole separate beast. Cons. Let's talk about the cons. I'm going to be real honest with you. An outside partner is not going to be as familiar with your brand. Depending on who you hire, they're going to have a more distant understanding of your brand, may or may not dig as deep as you'd like them to in order to communicate your message as effectively as someone on the inside. So you might go through a few different outsourced video production partners before you find one that is going to approach each project with a desire to really understand your messaging and your brand and the best way to craft the story. There's mileage may vary. You could hire someone that's just being like, all right, tell me where to point the camera. I'm here with my cameras. But you might hire someone that's going to really do a deep dive and creative discovery and all this stuff. So it's a spectrum. Inflexibility. You're going to have to forego the minutia. A lot of simple tasks like quick turnaround, content repurposing that can be done by an in-house videographer are going to be more difficult to get from an outside partner when you're bound by a particular project scope, unless they have included in that scope that they're going to do a bunch of snippets and, cut downs and whatever else. So yeah, the repurposing and just availability is the next one. The ability to drop everything and put out fires is more difficult with outside vendors. With in-house talent, your institution is their only client, but an agency, typically has many clients that they're serving at a given time and often can't sacrifice deadlines for another client in order to handle last minute revisions and requests for your institution. Early in when I first started Unveiled, I was lucky enough through a friend to get connected to one of the big streaming services. In order, there was a production company that was working with editors who would edit trailers for TV series and movies on this particular streaming platform. And the problem with that was I had other clients. And so I would edit a trailer and then the client would be like 9:00 at night. I'm like watching TV with my family and they're like, oh, we need this thing completely overhauled by the morning. And there was enough of that where I had to tell them, even though it was a super cool opportunity, like, to have on my resume or whatever, but I had to tell them I'm not set up to just drop everything and do this. Like, you might be better off working with in-house people. And they were like, yeah, this isn't a good fit because the editors that work with us, like, we're their only client. And then they're just dedicated to doing these trailers. And so we parted ways amicably and it just wasn't a good fit. And that's what you're going to find, to be a problem with external partners, is they can't just drop everything. The good news is higher ed, I have found, which is what I love about higher ed, is there's not a lot of fires in content creation, at least that make it to my plate. In corporate video, previous job I worked, everything was a rush. Every project, it's like companies waited till they needed it yesterday to hire a video company. And I'm like, do you want this to be good or do you want it to be fast? Like, why did you wait so long? And then we're just constantly rushing. It's super stressful. Fires, especially working with ad agencies. Oh my gosh. I mean, some of the absolute worst clients, the most demanding. I had one client, I'm like waking up at like 5 a.m. to do a remote editing session between my editor who was in Virginia and the client who was, I think, in California or something. I'm in Detroit and I'm trying to coordinate this as the producer for this project. And, so it's just at a certain point with them, we had to be like, okay, we've done a lot of this, like drop everything stuff. This request that you have that's due like in 5 minutes or whatever you just requested, we are not available. So yeah, availability is a tough one. B-roll, depending on who you hire, you may or may not get the raw B-roll included in the cost of a given project. A lot of video vendors charge extra for that, which I personally think is silly, but it's just a thing in the industry. A photographer or a videographer is very reluctant to give up the raw footage because they think they think you're going to run off with it and do something dumb, and then somehow that's going to reflect on them. I don't know. I think it's dumb. That's why at Unveiled, we give you all the B-roll, but I just would rather it be used. And even if it's used not as well as one of our editors would have done, I would rather be used than just sit on hard drives. But yeah, so, if you're wanting to build a B-roll library for future content needs, you're going to need to make sure that you have unlimited rights to that footage after the project wraps. And that's explicitly written into the contract. I've worked, again, corporate video, worked with, clients that kind of just assumed that they would get the footage and they just didn't really know how video production culture, outsourcing video production kind of works. And at the time, the company I was with, we charged extra for that footage. And so we had to go back to them and be like, sorry, this is going to be an extra $2,000. And she was like all mad and, because she didn't read the contract. So you got to make sure that it's written in the contract, work for hire, or that, the copyrights of the B-roll belong to you, because that's not the default for most video companies. Process. Many video partners are unfortunately not in tune with the frustrations that a lot of Marcom leaders experience of paying an outside vendor to produce a video and then having to do all the grunt work, finding people to be in the video, coordinating schedules. The right partner is going to take that off your plate, but a lot of video agencies' websites, they're going to promote the quality of their work and not the quality of their process. So sometimes you might not even know how much work you're going to be responsible for doing when you hire a particular company until you get into the project and you're like, I don't like this. I don't like my life right now, sending too many emails. So, you want to find a production partner that's going to have a great process, that's going to take work off your plate, not add more work to your plate. So there might be some trial and error before you find the right partner. Okay, so let's talk about what it means to strike a balance, because I think this is the best of both worlds, because you need both, in the same way that you need a left hand and a right hand. Both hands are going to work together and do different things to complete the anatomy. I don't know where I'm going with this, but striking a balance. There really is a big benefit to having an in-house videographer and also bringing in outside help. So your in-house videographer can handle a lot of that day-to-day, comms, videos, event coverage, social media content, assisting various departments with promotional needs, while, an outside partner can tackle some of the specific, like more produced projects, the commercials, the program overviews, ongoing storytelling campaigns, student testimonials, faculty profiles, whatever else like that. Oftentimes what happens when institutions only rely on in-house talent is, as we mentioned earlier in the episode, they kind of slip into this random acts of video production. They tie their videographer up in like day-to-day content needs, but then they neglect the strategic kind of forward pushing videos that are designed to really inspire and influence and move the needle on enrollment and brand engagement and all that stuff. So that's just something, a caution to keep in mind. If budget allows, it's smart to not do one at the expense of the other. If you have limited budget, it might be smart to think about the key, like forward pushing video content needs across the fiscal year and outsource those projects to ensure they get done and done at a high level. And this way you're prioritizing your flagship content. I like to call flagship content, which is not the sort of repurposed stuff, not the day-to-day social posts and stuff, but like your program overview videos, your student and alumni, success stories, your commercials, whatever else, like that flagship content. Let the social media team, if you have one, tackle the more lo-fi content that can be shot on an iPhone or, figure out how to do a user-generated UGC strategy, just make sure you have a solid distribution plan to go, with those flagship videos so they don't just get parked on YouTube and then get no engagement and collect digital dust. So if you can afford to do that and also hire in-house staff, develop a student-led content team or bring on an intern or two, you'll be in really great shape for executing a well-rounded video content strategy. So y'all, I hope this was helpful. I know this is a topic where a lot of Marcom leaders find themselves on the fence of, do we hire in-house or do we outsource? So I wanted to give you as unbiased look into this issue as I possibly can, as someone who has been on both sides of the equation and have seen how both the scenarios play out and the risks involved and whatever else. So I hope it was helpful. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode. Hey, thanks so much for listening. 3 things I want to invite you to before you go. Number 1, if you want to know what's working right now in higher ed video, like what videos are getting tons of views, likes, comments, all that, you can get ungated access to our report, aptly named What's Working in Higher Ed Video, a comprehensive guide for higher ed Marcom leaders and content creators. So check it out at unveiled.tv/higher ed video, and you might want to bookmark it because it's designed to be a resource for you that you can keep referring back to for inspiration. Number 2, reminder to sign up for my free newsletter all about content creation and strategy at unveiled.tv/newsletter. And number 3, follow me on LinkedIn. If you're searching for me, my name is John Azoni. It's spelled Johnazoni. I'm on there all day, every day, for better or for worse, posting regular content and engaging with folks like you. So I'd love to connect with you on there. And with that, we'll catch you on the next episode of the Higher Ed Storytelling University podcast. And as always, I am cheering you on. Okay, bye.